I stood frozen in my living room, watching the live feed from my door camera. There she was, Karen, my nosy neighbor from across the street, leaning over my front porch. Her oversized sunglasses and bright floral tracksuit didn't do much to hide her identity. Not from me, not from the camera. She carefully scanned the area, her head darting left and right like a guilty raccoon. My jaw tightened as I watched her casually bend down, grab my Amazon package, and strut away as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath, my hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. This wasn't just any package. It was something I'd been eagerly waiting for, a custom gift I'd ordered for my mom's birthday. And now, it was marching down the driveway in Karen's perfectly manicured hands. I couldn't believe her audacity. Sure, Karen had always been, let's just say, difficult. She had a knack for inserting herself into everyone's business, whether it was unsolicited advice about lawn care or complaints about kids playing too loudly in the neighborhood. But this? Stealing a package off my porch? This was a new low. I rewound the footage, my heart pounding as I watched the scene unfold again. There was no mistaking it. It was her. She even had the nerve to glance directly at the camera, her lips curling into a smug little smirk before walking away. The arrogance. I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest. Did she think I wouldn't notice? Or worse, that I wouldn't do anything about it? For a moment, I debated storming across the street to confront her right then and there. But no, that would play straight into her hands. Karen loved drama, and the last thing I wanted was to give her a public stage. Instead, I decided to play it smart. I grabbed my phone and saved the camera footage to my gallery, making sure I had every second of her crime documented. If she thought she could get away with this, she was in for a rude awakening. As I paced the living room, my mind raced with possibilities. I could call the police, but would they really take a porch theft seriously? Or should I try confronting her privately, maybe give her a chance to return the package before escalating things? Part of me just wanted to embarrass her publicly, post the video in the neighborhood group chat, and let everyone see the truth about Karen. But another part of me worried that might just make things worse. Karen wasn't the type to admit she was wrong, and I wasn't sure how far she'd go to cover her tracks. Just then, my phone buzzed with a notification. Another delivery update from Amazon. This one for a second package I'd completely forgotten about. My heart sank as I read the status. Delivered. Delivered? Now? I bolted to the front door and yanked it open, my eyes scanning the porch. Nothing. No box, no delivery driver, just the faint sound of Karen's yappy little dog barking in the distance. My blood ran cold. She wouldn't, would she? 2 packages in one day? I felt my stomach churn as I stepped out onto the porch and looked toward Karen's house. Sure enough, there she was, standing in her driveway with one of the packages in plain sight. It was sitting on her lawn chair like some sort of trophy, the Amazon Prime logo practically gleaming in the sunlight. I could feel the heat rising in my face as I watched her sip her iced tea, completely unbothered, like she hadn't just stolen from me twice in the same afternoon. This wasn't just bold. It was outright insulting. It was time to act. But how? I couldn't just walk over there and grab my stuff. It would be my word against hers, and Karen was nothing if not a skilled manipulator. I needed proof, something she couldn't argue her way out of. And luckily, I had just the thing. I marched back into my house, determined to gather everything I needed to expose her. My phone in hand, I scrolled through the footage, zooming in on her smug little smirk as she grabbed the package. It was perfect, clear, undeniable evidence. With a deep breath, I made my decision. I was going to confront her, but not without a plan. Karen thrived on turning situations into a circus, but this time, I would control the narrative. First, I forwarded the footage to my email, just in case she tried to deny it later. Then I saved it to a USB drive. If Karen thought she could lie her way out of this, she was about to face an uphill battle. I even considered printing out screenshots of her holding the package, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to overdo it. Not yet. As I prepared myself mentally for the confrontation, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. A grown woman stealing packages in broad daylight. What was she even thinking? Did she really believe no one would notice? Or was she so entitled that she thought she could take whatever she wanted without consequences? Either way, this wasn't going to end well for her. I stepped outside, walking purposefully across the street. My heart was pounding, but I kept my expression calm. Karen was still lounging in her driveway, sipping her drink and pretending not to notice me approaching. But as I got closer, she finally looked up, her lips curling into that signature Karen smirk. "Oh, hi there," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "What brings you over?" I stopped a few feet away, crossing my arms. "Hi, Karen. I think you know why I'm here." Her smirk faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, feigning innocence. I took out my phone and opened the footage, holding it up for her to see. "This," I said, my voice steady. "You took my package. Twice. And I've got it all right here." Karen's face turned a shade paler, but she still tried to play it cool. "Oh, that? I was just holding it for safekeeping. You know, with all the porch pirates these days, I thought I'd do you a favor." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because it looks an awful lot like you walked off with it and put it on your lawn chair." She waved a hand dismissively, letting out a forced laugh. "Oh, come on. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I was going to bring it back. Eventually." I stared at her, incredulous. "Karen, that package was clearly addressed to me. And this isn't the first time you've done this. I want it back. Now." Her eyes darted to the package sitting on the chair. For a moment, she looked like she might actually hand it over. But then, true to form, she doubled down. "Well, actually," she said, crossing her arms, "I'm pretty sure there's been a mix-up. I mean, how do you know it's yours? Lots of people get Amazon deliveries around here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was really going to try this? "Karen," I said, my patience wearing thin. "It has my name and address on it. You want me to show you the tracking number too?" She huffed, clearly annoyed that her excuses weren't working. "Fine," she snapped, grabbing the package from the chair and shoving it into my hands. "Take it, but next time, you should thank me for keeping it safe." I couldn't help but laugh. "Thank you? For stealing my stuff?" "Yeah, I don't think so." As I turned to leave, I couldn't resist adding, "Oh, and by the way, I've already saved this footage. So if it happens again, I'll have no problem taking it to the authorities." Karen didn't respond, but the look on her face said it all. For once, she didn't have a clever comeback. I walked back to my house, package in hand, feeling a small sense of victory. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to back down quietly, and something told me she'd find a way to escalate things. As I stepped inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger problem. The next day, I woke up to a series of loud knocks on my front door. The kind of knocking that immediately puts you on edge, persistent and aggressive. I groaned, pulling myself out of bed and heading toward the door, already guessing who it might be. Sure enough, through the peephole, I saw Karen standing there, her arms crossed and her lips pursed in a tight, disapproving frown. This was not going to be a pleasant conversation. I opened the door cautiously, only enough to lean out. "Morning, Karen. Something I can help you with?" She didn't waste a second. "You embarrassed me in front of my guests yesterday," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to make me flinch. "You made me look like a thief, and that is completely unacceptable." I stared at her, trying to process the audacity of what she was saying. "Karen, you are a thief. You literally took my packages off my porch." She waved a hand as if brushing off the facts. "That's not the point. You didn't need to humiliate me. What if someone had seen you accusing me like that? I've lived in this neighborhood for years. People respect me here." I blinked at her, completely dumbfounded. "Karen, you stole from me. What did you expect me to do? Thank you?" She let out an exaggerated sigh, shaking her head as if I was the unreasonable one. "Look, I don't want this to turn into some big drama, okay? I think we can settle this like adults." "Oh, really?" I folded my arms, curious where she was going with this. "And how exactly do you suggest we do that?" She gave me a tight, forced smile. "You delete that video. Right now. No one needs to see it, and we can just move on." I promise it won't happen again. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bursting out before I could stop myself. You want me to delete the evidence? The evidence that proves you stole from me? Yeah, that's not going to happen. Her fake smile dropped instantly, replaced by a cold glare. If you don't delete it, she said, her voice low and threatening, I'll make sure you regret it. You think you're the only one with cameras? I've seen plenty of things I could report about you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? Like what? She hesitated, clearly caught off guard. Like, your trash cans. They're always left out too long after pickup. And your hedges, they're not trimmed evenly. That's against HOA rules, you know? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen, if this is your idea of leverage, you might want to rethink your strategy. And for the record, my trash cans and hedges are perfectly fine. Her face flushed red with frustration, and for a moment, I thought she might actually start yelling. But instead, she turned on her heel and stomped off, muttering under her breath. I watched her go, shaking my head in disbelief. Karen truly lived in her own reality, one where she was the victim in every situation, no matter how obviously wrong she was. As much as I wanted to brush off the encounter, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling it left behind. Karen wasn't the type to let things go, and her vague threats about regretting it lingered in my mind. I decided it was time to take extra precautions. If she wanted to play games, I'd be ready. That afternoon, I installed a second camera in the backyard, making sure every angle of my property was covered. I even upgraded the security system to send me instant alerts for any unusual activity. It might have seemed excessive, but with Karen as a neighbor, I figured it was better to be safe than sorry. My instincts proved to be right. Later that evening, as I was reviewing the footage from earlier in the day, I noticed something strange. Around 2 p.m., while I had been out running errands, Karen had wandered into my front yard. She stood there for a few minutes, looking around as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Then, to my shock, she pulled out a notepad and started writing something down while pointing at my house. What was she doing? Taking notes for the HOA? Plotting her next move? Whatever it wasn't normal behavior. I saved the clip and made a mental note to keep an eye on her. Something told me this wasn't the last time she crossed a line. The following day started out peaceful enough, but I should have known better than to expect it to last. By mid-afternoon, I was in my home office catching up on emails when my phone buzzed with a notification from the security app, motion detected, front yard. My heart sank as I opened the live feed, half expecting to see Karen standing there again. But this time, it wasn't her. Instead, it was a uniformed HOA officer, clipboard in hand, inspecting my front yard. I felt my stomach twist. Karen must have made good on her threats and filed some sort of complaint against me. I watched as the officer walked around, pausing occasionally to scribble something on his clipboard. He seemed particularly interested in my trash cans, which were neatly tucked away to the side of the house, and the hedges, which, despite Karen's claims, were perfectly trimmed. I debated whether or not to go outside and ask what was going on, but I decided against it. Instead, I stayed inside and waited for him to leave, all the while taking screenshots of the live footage as evidence. Once he was gone, I went outside to check the mailbox, and sure enough, there was a letter from the HOA waiting for me. I opened it right there on the porch, my hands shaking with irritation. The letter was exactly what I feared, a formal notice of violation. According to the HOA, my trash cans were improperly stored, my hedges were not up to community standards, and I had an unauthorized item visible in my front yard. I glanced around, trying to figure out what they were referring to, and then it hit me. The small garden gnome I'd placed near the walkway as a joke. It was harmless, a little ceramic figure holding a coffee mug that read, "Not today, Karen." I couldn't help but smirk at the irony. Still, the whole thing felt ridiculous. Karen was clearly behind this, using the HOA as her personal army to harass me. But I wasn't about to let her win. I marched back inside, sat down at my computer, and started drafting a response to the HOA. I included photos of my yard, screenshots from the security footage showing the officer's inspection, and a polite but firm explanation that the complaints were baseless. I also mentioned Karen's recent behavior, though I kept it vague. No need to escalate things unnecessarily just yet. After hitting send, I leaned back in my chair, trying to calm the anger bubbling inside me. This woman was relentless. First the package thefts, now this? It was like she had made it her life's mission to make me miserable. But if she thought I was just going to roll over and take it, she was in for a rude awakening. Later that evening, as I was sitting on the couch trying to unwind, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a security alert. It was a notification from the neighborhood Facebook group. I opened it, curious, and immediately felt my blood boil. There, at the top of the page, was a post from Karen. "Attention neighbors," it read. "I've noticed some troubling behavior in our community lately. Certain residents seem to think they're above the rules, leaving trash cans out, neglecting their yards, and bringing down the overall quality of our neighborhood. We all need to do our part to maintain our beautiful community. If you see something, say something." Beneath her post were several comments, most of them supportive. "Thank you for looking out for us, Karen," one person wrote. "We need more people like you to keep the neighborhood in shape," said another. But there were also a few skeptical voices. "Who exactly are you talking about?" one person asked. "Seems like someone has too much time on their hands," another chimed in. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to reply. Engaging with her publicly would only feed into her drama. But I wasn't about to let her get away with this smear campaign. Instead, I saved screenshots of the post and the comments. If she wanted to play dirty, I was more than ready to fight back, on my terms. The next morning, I decided to take a proactive approach. I went door to door to speak with some of my neighbors, people I knew well enough to trust. I told them about the situation with Karen, from the package thefts to the false HOA complaints, and even showed them the security footage. Most of them were shocked but not entirely surprised. Karen, it seemed, had a bit of a reputation for stirring up trouble. One neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, even shared her own story. "Oh, she's done this before," she said, shaking her head. "Last year, she reported my Christmas decorations for being too bright. The HOA didn't even take her seriously, but she still made my life miserable for weeks." Hearing this only strengthened my resolve. Karen's pattern of behavior wasn't just annoying. It was harmful. She was a bully, plain and simple, and it was time someone stood up to her. Armed with a clearer picture of Karen's history and a growing sense of solidarity with my neighbors, I decided it was time to escalate. The security footage of her stealing my packages and the HOA officer's inspection were already solid evidence. But I needed a way to make Karen's behavior backfire in the most satisfying and public way possible. That's when the idea hit me. I would use her own tactics against her. I spent the afternoon compiling everything I had: videos, photos, the ridiculous HOA complaint letter, and even screenshots of Karen's Facebook post. With the help of a tech-savvy friend, I put together a detailed, professional-looking presentation. The centerpiece, of course, was the video of Karen stealing the packages, paired with timestamps and a clear explanation of the events. It was impossible to misinterpret, but I wasn't done yet. I added testimonies from Mrs. Thompson and a few other neighbors who had agreed to speak up about Karen's previous antics. One neighbor, Mr. Patel, even provided a photo of Karen snooping through his flower beds last spring. "She said she was checking for weeds," he told me, rolling his eyes. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now it all makes sense. With everything compiled, I emailed the presentation directly to the HOA board under the subject line, "Urgent Concern, Ongoing Harassment and Rule Violations." I kept the tone professional, avoiding any personal attacks, but I made it clear that Karen's behavior was unacceptable and harmful to the community. I ended the email with a request for a formal review of her actions and offered to provide additional evidence if needed. It didn't take long to get a response. By the next morning, I received an email from the HOA president, a no-nonsense woman named Diane. She thanked me for bringing the matter to their attention and assured me that the board would investigate thoroughly. She also mentioned that they had received multiple complaints about Karen in the past, but hadn't had sufficient evidence to take action until now. I felt a small sense of victory, but I knew better than to celebrate too soon. Karen wasn't the type to back down without a fight, and sure enough, she made her next move later that day. It started with another knock at my door, but this time it wasn't Karen. It was a police officer. My heart skipped a beat as I opened the door, wondering what she could possibly have done now. The officer introduced himself politely and explained why he was there. "We received a report of stolen property," he said, glancing at a notepad. "Your neighbor, Karen, claims you have packages that belong to her." I blinked, stunned for a moment before a wave of disbelief washed over me. "You're kidding, right?" I asked, though I already knew he wasn't. "No, ma'am," he said, his tone neutral. "She provided some basic details about the items and said she believes they were misdelivered to you and that you refused to return them." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound tinged with frustration. "Officer, I have security footage proving that she stole those packages from my porch. Would you like to see it?" The officer raised an eyebrow. "You have footage?" "Absolutely," I said, stepping back to grab my phone. Within minutes, I was showing him the video of Karen swiping the packages and walking back to her house. The officer watched closely, his expression growing more serious with each passing second. "Well," he said, handing my phone back, "this paints a very different picture from the one she gave us." "Exactly," I said, crossing my arms. "She's trying to weaponize the police to cover her tracks. I've already reported her to the HOA and have evidence of other complaints she's filed against me and my neighbors." The officer nodded. "I'll have to follow up with her, but based on this footage, it's clear you're not in the wrong here. If I were you, I'd hold on to this evidence and consider filing a report of your own." "Thank you," I said, feeling a surge of relief. As he left, I couldn't help but wonder how Karen would react when the officer confronted her with the footage. She was digging herself into a deeper hole, and it was only a matter of time before she hit rock bottom. Sure enough, about an hour later, I saw the police car parked in front of Karen's house. I watched from my window as the officer knocked on her door, clipboard in hand. She opened it with her usual air of defiance, but as the conversation went on, her posture changed. Her arms dropped to her sides, her head tilted slightly, and for the first time in all this drama, she looked genuinely nervous. By the time the officer left, Karen's face was flushed, and she slammed her door shut so hard that it rattled the frame. I couldn't help but smile. Maybe, just maybe, she was finally starting to realize that her actions had consequences. The next morning, I woke up to find the neighborhood buzzing with chatter. Karen's confrontation with the police had clearly not gone unnoticed, and the ripple effects were spreading fast. My phone pinged with a message from Mrs. Thompson. "Check the neighborhood group. You're going to love this." I opened the app, and there it was, a post from Diane, the HOA president, detailing the results of their investigation. It wasn't subtle. She thanked concerned residents for coming forward with evidence of rule violations and confirmed that disciplinary action was being taken against a specific homeowner. While she didn't name Karen outright, the comments section quickly filled with speculation, and it wasn't hard to connect the dots. "Finally, someone is doing something about her," one person wrote. "It's about time Karen got called out for her nonsense," said another. I couldn't help but grin as I read through the thread. It seemed like the entire neighborhood was united against her now. Even better, Diane reached out to me personally later that day to let me know the HOA had issued Karen a formal warning and hefty fines for her actions. She also hinted that if Karen continued to cause trouble, she could face more serious consequences, including possible legal action. But Karen wasn't ready to go down quietly. That afternoon, as I was working in the backyard, I heard her voice, shrill and angry, echoing across the street. I peeked through the fence and saw her standing in her driveway, arguing with a delivery driver. It seemed she had taken it upon herself to inspect everyone's packages now, likely as a twisted form of revenge. I shook my head, knowing this was only going to make things worse for her. And worse they got. The next day, Diane informed me that Karen had been reported for harassing multiple delivery drivers in the area. Combined with her previous violations, the HOA board had called an emergency meeting to discuss further action. I wasn't invited, of course, but Mrs. Thompson was kind enough to fill me in afterward. "She tried to play the victim," Mrs. Thompson said, barely containing her laughter. "She actually stood up and said she was just trying to protect the neighborhood from theft. But then Diane pulled out your footage and shut her down completely. She couldn't say a word." By the end of the meeting, Karen had been stripped of her ability to file complaints through the HOA. And if she continued her behavior, Diane promised, She'd face legal action not just from the HOA, but from the residents she'd harassed, including me. The icing on the cake came a week later. I was sitting on my porch, enjoying the rare peace and quiet, when I saw a moving truck pull up in front of Karen's house. At first, I thought it was some kind of fluke, but as the hours passed, it became clear. Karen was moving out. Neighbors started gathering on their porches, watching as the truck was loaded up. Some exchanged whispers, others waved politely, but no one went over to say goodbye. Karen stomped in and out of the house, barking orders at the movers, her face a mask of frustration. It was clear she wasn't leaving on her own terms. As the truck pulled away later that evening, I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief. For the first time in months, the neighborhood felt normal again. No drama, no petty complaints, no Karen lurking around every corner. Later that night, I sat down with a glass of wine and rewatched the security footage one last time. Not out of anger, but for the sheer satisfaction of seeing justice served. Karen thought she could bully her way through life, but she learned the hard way that actions have consequences. And as for me, well, let's just say I won't be leaving my packages unattended anymore. Not that I'll need to worry, because with Karen gone, the neighborhood finally feels like home again. It all started when I came home to find my delivery package missing. It wasn't the usual, "Oh, it was just misplaced," kind of feeling. No, this felt different. I knew something was off the moment I saw the empty spot on the porch. I immediately checked the security footage, only to witness something I didn't expect in a million years. Karen, the woman from 2 houses down, casually walked up to my front door, bent down, and stole my package. She didn't just take it, she acted like it was her own. I froze, staring at the screen. It was hard to believe. Karen, the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, had just taken my package. Of all the people, it had to be her. I quickly replayed the footage, as if I could somehow convince myself it wasn't her. But there it was, her red cardigan, her smug look, and the way she casually tucked my package under her arm and walked away like nothing had happened. This wasn't just about a missing package. It was about power, control, and the kind of entitlement that made me feel sick. I wasn't just a regular homeowner. I was a private investigator. And this wasn't a simple theft. No, something about this felt planned, orchestrated. Karen wasn't just some nosy neighbor. She had something to hide. As a PI, I'd seen it all, from cheating spouses to missing persons. But this was personal. She had no idea who she was messing with. I made my decision right then and there. I wasn't going to let this slide. This wasn't just about getting my package back. It was about uncovering what Karen was really up to. And what better way to catch someone than by playing the game from the shadows? After all, I wasn't just any investigator. I was someone who knew how to dig, to find the truth hidden beneath layers of lies. The next few hours were spent preparing. I gathered everything I knew about Karen. The surface stuff, like her HOA duties and the way she always walked around with a clipboard, pretending to care about the neighborhood. But I knew there had to be more. She wasn't just a controlling figure in the neighborhood. She was involved in something bigger. As I watched her from across the street, I made a mental note of her every move. Her routine, her trips to the store, the way she interacted with her neighbors. It all seemed so normal, so unassuming. But I knew better than to trust appearances. I started my investigation the only way I knew how, by blending in. I spent the next few days watching her. Not in a creepy, obvious way, but enough to know when she left the house, when she came back, and when she interacted with other people. Each day I watched her, I felt more and more that there was something darker behind her seemingly innocent exterior. But what was it? Why had she stolen my package, and why did she feel so entitled to do so? It wasn't until a few days later that I found the first real clue. While Karen was out, I decided to pay a visit to her front porch. I wasn't expecting much, just a quick look around to see if there was anything unusual. But what I found made my heart race. Tucked under her doormat was a folded piece of paper, looking out of place. I picked it up carefully, unfolded it, and read the contents. It was a letter, not addressed to her, but to someone else. The letter was cryptic but direct. It talked about ensuring compliance and maintaining control over the community. It mentioned names, dates, and places I had never seen before. I quickly realized this wasn't just a note about neighborhood rules. This was a directive. Someone was giving her orders. And whatever it was, it had to be big. I stuffed the letter in my pocket, my mind racing. This wasn't just about a stolen package anymore. This was about a conspiracy. But who was behind it? And why was Karen involved? I had to know more. The only way to do that was to confront her, but I knew I couldn't do it directly. If I did, I'd lose the element of surprise. Instead, I would keep watching, keep digging. It was time to find out what she was really up to. Little did she know, the game had just begun, and I was going to make sure she played by my rules. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter I found on Karen's porch. There was something deeply unsettling about it. I knew the only way I could figure out what was really going on was to get closer to Karen, but I couldn't risk her knowing I was onto her. As a private investigator, I was used to staying under the radar, but this felt different. This was personal now, and I needed to be smart. I decided to focus on her routine. I knew she worked from home, running the HOA operations from a small office in her house. She often walked around the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, making her rounds, judging everyone from the neatly kept lawns to the color of their mailbox. But this time, I noticed something different. Every day at the same time, she would take a brief walk around the block, seemingly to check in on the neighborhood, but I had a gut feeling there was more to it. It was late one evening when I decided to follow her. I waited until the streetlights flickered on and the neighborhood fell into its usual quiet hum. Then, I slipped out of my house, making sure to keep my distance as I followed Karen. She walked with purpose, her eyes scanning the houses like she was looking for something or someone. I stayed several paces behind, keeping to the shadows. At one point, she stopped in front of an empty house 2 blocks down, staring at it for what felt like an eternity. My heart began to race. I'd never seen her act like this before. She turned and continued her walk, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she had just uncovered something. Or perhaps, she had been keeping something hidden. It didn't make sense. Why was she so focused on that particular house? I couldn't get the image out of my mind. Something about it didn't add up. I knew I had to go back there the next day, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The following morning, I retraced her steps, heading to the same vacant house she had visited the night before. It was strange. The house had been empty for months, the grass overgrown, the mailbox stuffed with junk mail, but there was something different about it now. As I approached the property, I saw a faint glimmer of movement behind the curtain of an upstairs window. My breath caught. I was being watched. I stepped back, trying to blend into the shadows, but my heart was pounding in my chest. Had Karen noticed me, or was it someone else? I decided to leave before I attracted any more attention, but the encounter left me with more questions than answers. That night, as I was going through my notes and the footage I had gathered, I realized something. The more I investigated, the more I uncovered about Karen's connections to the neighborhood and the HOA. There were whispers of mysterious projects and secret meetings, but no one could seem to pin down the details. I knew something big was happening, and I was getting closer to unraveling it. Then, a few days later, I got an unexpected visitor. A man in a suit showed up at my door, flashing a badge. He introduced himself as an agent from a federal agency, but something about him didn't sit right. His questions were strange, probing into my recent activities, asking about my interest in Karen and the HOA. The agent was polite, but there was a coldness in his demeanor. He seemed to know a lot more about me than he should. It hit me. I was no longer just dealing with Karen. I was up against something much bigger, something far more dangerous. I played it cool, pretending I knew nothing. But inside, I was furious. I had been right. This wasn't just about Karen. She was just the pawn. There were bigger players involved, and I had no idea who they were or what they wanted. But one thing was clear. I couldn't back down now. I had to see this through. Over the next few days, I made contact with a few of my old PI contacts, people who had connections in the right places. It wasn't easy, but after a few tense phone calls, I managed to get my hands on more information about the mysterious activities surrounding Karen's HOA. There were connections to several high-ranking individuals, people who had influence over the entire neighborhood. This was no longer a petty theft. This was about control, manipulation, and surveillance. Karen had been acting as a shield for something much larger. But what exactly was she protecting? I had no clue, but I was determined to find out. Armed with my new information, I started to piece together the puzzle, connecting the dots between Karen, the mysterious house, and the strange meetings that were happening behind closed doors. Each new revelation only deepened the mystery, and with every twist, I knew I was getting closer to the truth. But little did I know, the moment I got too close, the game would change entirely. The investigation had reached a critical point. Every time I thought I was closing in on the truth, something bigger would appear, pulling me in deeper. Each piece of information was like a breadcrumb leading me further down a dark and twisted path. My suspicion grew with each passing day, and the more I uncovered, the more I realized that the situation wasn't just about a stolen package. It was about surveillance, manipulation, and control of the entire neighborhood. But who was behind it all? It was during one of my late-night sessions, reviewing everything I had gathered, that I stumbled upon a detail that made my blood run cold. I had been looking through the files Karen kept, ones she thought were well hidden, when I found something odd. It was a list. Not just a list of names, but a list of addresses, properties, and strange notes that didn't make sense. I'd seen her move with authority, her role in the HOA more than just about lawn care and property values. But now, I saw her involvement in something much darker. The list contained detailed information about people in the neighborhood, including names, personal habits, and even private events. What disturbed me most was that many of the names were flagged. Subject: high risk. Subject: monitoring. And in one chilling entry, subject: targeted for elimination. I sat there, staring at the screen, unable to comprehend the depth of what I was looking at. My first instinct was to call someone, anyone. But I realized that by doing so, I'd be walking into a trap. I had to keep going. I couldn't turn back now. I immediately began cross-referencing the addresses. The more I dug, the more I realized the same names kept popping up in relation to major properties in the area. The connections were all too convenient. The HOA wasn't just about enforcing rules. It was a front, a cover for a covert operation. And the more I found, the clearer it became that Karen wasn't acting alone. She was merely the face of a much larger organization, an organization with power, influence, and resources that stretched far beyond the neighborhood. But the biggest shock came when I checked one of the flagged properties on the list. It was the same empty house Karen had been so fixated on. The one she had visited during her nightly walks. The one I had been keeping an eye on. The one that had been vacant for months. According to the notes, the house wasn't vacant at all. It was the headquarters for a clandestine operation. A hidden base of sorts, tucked away in plain sight. That explained the strange movement I'd noticed in the upstairs window, the reason Karen had been so focused on it. She wasn't checking a random house. She was guarding it, protecting something or someone inside. I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. I had uncovered a network of surveillance, control, and perhaps even danger. But the more I found, the more questions arose. Who were these people? And why had they singled out Karen to run the show in this neighborhood? What was the ultimate goal behind it all? I decided to confront her, at least, that was the plan. I knew it was a risk, but I couldn't ignore the opportunity. It had to be done carefully. I couldn't just walk up to her front door and demand answers. I needed leverage. And the list was my leverage. But as I prepared for the confrontation, I received an unexpected message. It wasn't from Karen. It wasn't even from anyone I recognized. The message was simple: we know what you're doing. Stop now, or we'll make you regret it. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just a warning. This was a direct threat. Whoever was behind this was watching me, tracking my every move. It was clear they were aware of my investigation, and they weren't going to let me continue without consequences. Suddenly, everything felt more dangerous. I couldn't afford to be reckless. I had to outsmart them. I had to stay one step ahead. But that's when things took an even darker turn. The next morning, I woke to find my car's tires slashed and my front door ajar. I froze. This was no coincidence. They knew where I lived. They knew everything. I wasn't just some observer anymore. I was part of the game. A dangerous, life-threatening game. I had no choice but to keep pushing forward. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. But as I walked toward Karen's house, heart pounding in my chest, I realized something else. The stakes had changed. It wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about survival. And as I approached her house, I had no idea what kind of war I was walking into. I stepped onto her porch, my mind racing. I didn't know if I was prepared for what was about to unfold, but I knew one thing. Karen was no longer just a neighbor. She was a key player in a much larger scheme. And I was about to discover just how deep the rabbit hole went. As I stood in front of Karen's door, a sense of dread washed over me. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I pushed the fear aside. I couldn't let her see my uncertainty. With one hand, I knocked softly, keeping my posture relaxed, though inside, every muscle was tense. I didn't expect her to open the door immediately. I knew she would be cautious. It wasn't just about the HOA anymore. It was something bigger, and Karen was at the center of it all. The door creaked open. Karen stood in the frame, her usual smile firmly in place, though there was something off about her. She wasn't just the overbearing neighbor. Now, there was a coldness in her eyes. I didn't move. I just stared back at her, waiting for her to speak. She didn't ask me to come inside. Instead, her smile tightened, and she crossed her arms over her chest. "Can I help you?" Her voice was friendly enough, but there was an edge to it. It was as if she already knew why I was here. Maybe she had been expecting this visit. I glanced past her, noting the calmness in her demeanor. The house was quiet, too quiet. I could see into the living room where everything was meticulously arranged. The perfect suburban home. But beneath that, I knew there was something dark lurking. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to step into a trap. I stepped forward slowly. "I need to talk to you about something," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's about the HOA and your activities around here. I know you've been involved in something bigger than you're letting on." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment. It was subtle, but I caught it. It wasn't fear, but it was something else, recognition. She knew exactly what I was talking about, and that sent a chill down my spine. "I'm not sure what you mean," Karen said, her tone still sweet but now laced with something colder. "Perhaps you've been misinformed?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped past her, entering the house. I had to do it. I had to push. There was no going back now. Karen didn't stop me, but I could feel the tension building between us, like a tug of war. I moved through the house, pretending to admire the decor while keeping my eyes open for anything unusual. Every corner, every photograph on the walls, felt like a small piece of the puzzle. She followed me silently, her presence looming in the background, like a shadow. The house was pristine, like a show home, nothing out of place, nothing unusual. But then I saw it on a small table near the back door. It was a folder, casually resting there, but the name written on it caught my attention. It was my name. I didn't say anything at first, but I felt my stomach drop. My name. There was no reason for my name to be on anything in her house. None. I turned to face Karen, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her eyes. It wasn't fear or surprise, it was knowing. "What's this?" I asked, my voice sharp now. I couldn't hide my suspicion any longer. She stepped forward, as if preparing to answer, but then stopped. Her lips twisted into a smile that felt more like a threat than anything else. "You don't know what you're getting into," she said quietly. "But you will." Before I could respond, the door to the back room opened. A man stepped into the room, tall and broad-shouldered. His eyes were cold, and his expression was unreadable. I hadn't seen him before, but something about him made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, then at Karen, and nodded once, like they were in on something together. Karen glanced at the man, then back at me. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this," she said, almost apologetically. "But you've been asking too many questions." I stepped back, feeling my pulse race. "What is this? What have you been doing?" I demanded. But Karen didn't answer. She only nodded at the man. Suddenly, the man moved quickly, almost too quickly. Before I could react, he grabbed my arm and pulled me towards the door. I struggled, trying to break free, but his grip was like iron. The last thing I saw before the door slammed shut behind me was Karen, standing in the doorway, watching with an unsettling calmness. I didn't know what was happening, but I was about to find out. The man pushed me down a narrow hallway, through a door, and into a room I didn't recognize. It was dark, only a single light bulb hanging overhead. And then I saw it. A table, covered in files, documents, and photos. But it wasn't the papers that caught my attention. It was the photo pinned to the wall, a picture of me. I turned to face the man, my heart pounding. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The man didn't speak. Instead, he moved to a nearby desk, pulled open a drawer, and retrieved a thick file. He tossed it onto the table in front of me. I opened it, my fingers shaking. The first page was a report, my report. Everything about me, from my personal life to my private investigation records. It was all there, in black and white. This wasn't just about Karen. This wasn't even just about the HOA anymore. I had uncovered something far more dangerous, and they were ready to make sure I didn't walk away with the truth. They had been watching me this entire time, tracking my every move. The man leaned in, his voice cold. "You've uncovered something you shouldn't have. But now, it's too late." I had been right. Karen wasn't just a thief. She was part of something bigger, something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. And now, I was caught in the web. The room felt smaller as the weight of the documents on the table pressed down on me. I glanced at the man again, trying to figure out who he was and why he was involved. He wasn't law enforcement. I could tell by his unmarked attire and the cold way he moved. He was a part of something far more dangerous than I had ever anticipated. And now, I was part of it too. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots, but everything was slipping through my fingers. I had walked right into their trap. I looked at the files again. They weren't just about me. They were about the entire neighborhood. There were reports on people I knew, people I had lived alongside for years, all carefully documented with observations, notes, and judgments. Each file told a story of control, surveillance, and manipulation. And in every report, Karen's name appeared. She was the orchestrator of all this, a puppet in a larger game, pulling strings while hiding in plain sight. The man leaned against the desk, his arms crossed, watching me closely as I absorbed the gravity of what I was looking at. His eyes never left mine, as though he could read my thoughts, could feel the turmoil in me. But he didn't speak. It was clear he wasn't here to explain. He was here to make sure I didn't get any ideas about leaving this room. The silence between us stretched on. Every moment felt like an eternity, but I couldn't break it. I needed to think, to plan my next move. Then, the door behind me creaked open. I turned instinctively, my muscles tensing. It was Karen. She stepped into the room, closing the door quietly behind her. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, there was no mask, no smile, just cold indifference. "You really had to dig, didn't you?" she said softly, almost as if it was a regret. "I warned you this would end badly." My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but I knew I couldn't let my anger take control. I had to play this carefully. "What is all of this? What do you want from me?" Karen's lips twitched, as if she found my question amusing. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked toward the table and started flipping through the files with slow, deliberate movements. She was savoring the moment, enjoying the power she held over me. "What do we want?" she echoed, her voice soft but cold. "We want control. We want compliance. We want to reshape the community in our image." I didn't understand. Community? You're controlling people, violating their privacy, and monitoring them like lab rats. That's not a community. That's a dictatorship. Karen smiled, but there was nothing warm about it. "You're not seeing the bigger picture. People like you, people who ask too many questions, are the problem. You disrupt the balance, and that's unacceptable. We're making this neighborhood a better place, a safer place. People like you don't fit in. That's why we had to eliminate the threat." My stomach churned. Eliminate? Was I next? Was this what the targeted for elimination note had meant? I felt the walls closing in on me. But before I could react, I heard a sound behind me, a soft clicking noise. I turned and saw the man adjusting something on the wall. A hidden camera? A microphone? I didn't know, but my instincts kicked in. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to act. I needed to get out. I lunged forward, grabbing the file closest to me. Without thinking, I hurled it at the man, hoping to distract him. He stumbled back, giving me the briefest moment of opportunity. I bolted for the door, pushing past Karen and the man as quickly as I could, but they were faster. The man grabbed my arm, yanking me back with alarming strength. My heart hammered in my chest as I struggled against his hold. "You think you can just leave?" Karen's voice was low, filled with menace. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "It's not that easy. You've seen too much. Now, you're a part of this whether you like it or not." I fought to free myself, but it was hopeless. My mind raced. I had to find a way out. The files, the documents. There had to be something I could use against them, something to give me an edge. And then, as if by some miracle, I remembered something. In the pile of files on the table, one stood out. The folder with the name Echo 7 written on it. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed too important to ignore. The name sounded like a project, an operation. My instincts told me it was the key to everything. If I could get my hands on that, maybe I could expose them. I made my move. I twisted free from the man's grip, knocking him off balance. For a moment, I thought I had a chance to escape. I darted back toward the table, grabbing the folder. But as I turned to leave, I froze. Karen was standing in front of the door, blocking my only way out. "Do you really think you're going to get away with this?" she asked, her voice icy. "You've already made a mistake by coming here, and now you've made another by taking that folder." I backed away, my eyes locked on the folder in my hands. I'll make sure the world knows about this, I said, trying to sound confident, though my heart was racing. You can't hide this forever. Karen didn't flinch. Instead, she just smiled again, that same cold, knowing smile. We'll see about that, she said quietly. Just as she spoke, the door behind her swung open, and a man in a black suit stepped into the room. His expression was blank, but there was something familiar about him. He locked eyes with me, and for a split second, I recognized him from the security footage at Karen's house. He had been watching me all along. The last thing I heard before everything went dark was his voice. It's over. You're done. And then, the room spun, and the world faded to black.